The daily code snippet. Now we will work on the main content and add code to our demo sections. We will pull code from our previous videos to serve as examples and show you how to add additional sections as needed so that you can test code. So here we have our section code where we have taken code from a previous video, the one about tables, and we've placed it into our section 1. Section 1 is denoted here by this third level heading, H3, and what we're going to do is actually change the table demo head to a level 4 heading, H4, and we chose code that has the information that helps us with assistive devices. So we have a caption that tells the user what the table is about so that they can decide if they want to continue to read out the contents of the table or if it's something that they can skip. And we are also using code that contains the T head, the T body, and the T foot. And this table data also uses the scope attribute that lets the browser know more clearly whether a table header element is for a column or if it's for your row. So this way, the assistive device reads out all the information from the table data appropriately to a user that is using an assistive device. And in our T-foot, we have a table data element using a col_span attribute that spans 5 columns, and it's just a note that says we aren't displaying all of our data. And we will make this file size a bit smaller so that the person understands that this information is available, but it's not as important as the rest of the information. We also need to add some styles to make it easier to look at this table, so we have constrained the width of the table, collapsed our borders, added spacing to our table data and table header elements, and added background colors as well to help the user understand which column or row the data belongs. And if we look down a table row, we're using code to add a background color to alternate rows, and this is helpful again for someone looking at a table to identify which row the data belongs. So if we were to look at our table on our demo code page, we see that it is in section 1. We have our third level heading 3 for section 1, and we have our fourth level heading H4 for table demo. We have our caption that lets the user know what information is in the table, and you can see that we have some styling that helps identify rows and columns. It makes it easier to look at the data across and understand it. For example, you understand that you're still dealing with pet number 5, and we have our footer information that lets the user know that we only have partial data and we can get additional data upon request. Going back to your demo code page, we now can move to section 2 where I've taken information from the forum videos, and I chose code that I thought might be helpful for you to take a look at on your own and be able to play with. So this is the code for a radio button, and we're going to do the same thing where we adjust the table heading to be an H4 level heading. You use radio buttons in the situation where you have a question and when you want the user to give you a single response. So in this case, the question is, do you have a pet? And they can either respond with yes, they have a pet, no, they don't have a pet, or they don't want to really tell you whether they have a pet or not. But they can't tell you yes, no, and they don't want to say. It wouldn't make any sense. When you want the user to give you more than one response, then you will choose to use a checkbox. So the radio buttons are for a particular type of a response where you only want the user to tell you one answer. And we know that this is a radio button because we have a type attribute that tells the browser that it is a radio button. And in this case, you need to have each response have a same name value, so pet status is the same in each. We see that we use the for attribute to bind the correct label to the correct input. So for the for attribute will match the ID attribute. And we also use the checked attribute to denote which answer we want to have pre-selected, which is prefer not to say, or we don't know, or unknown status for pet status. And then we also have our input to submit the answer once it's selected. So we go back to our demo code page and we hit section 2, and now we can move to see the radio button, and you can see our navigation will help toggle between sections 1 and 2. And so we have our radio buttons. We already see that we have adjusted the heading to a level 4 heading, and now if we select yes, then it will automatically unselect prefer not to say. We submit a response, and then the form resets, so then now we'll have prefer not to say again selected. So now we have our output code for section 3, and again we're going to adjust the heading to become an H4 level heading, and the output is used for mathematical calculations, and in this case we have a range input where we will have step increments of 1, a minimum value of 0, and a maximum value of 10, and a preset value of 5. And then the second element is a number input whose preset value is 50, and the user can increase or decrease it. And the form element has an onInput attribute that has our mathematical calculation, which is that x equals the value of a multiplied by the value of b, and because our present value of a is 5 and our preset value of b is 50, 5 times 50 is 250. And then after that, the user can adjust these values by adjusting the range value and the number value. And finally, we have our input for submit, and they will submit the user's response. So now if we go to our demo code page and we hit section 3, we will move to our output calculation, and we can adjust the range slider that goes from 0 to 10. And if we keep the number at 50, you see that it basically increases the output by 50 up to a maximum of 500, or 50 times 10. And then the number can be adjusted up and down. Makes the math a little bit less straightforward, but again, you are just multiplying. So in this case, 10 times 49 is 490, and the increments change differently. So you can decide to adjust the code within each section, delete the code that I've already selected here, or add whatever code you want. But if you want to keep these, then you can always add another section. So you can just take the code in section 3 and copy it into section 4, and then if we save and refresh, you can go back to our demo page and you can see that now section 4 exists. But we also have to adjust our navigation bar. And the spacing still applies for section 4 because we're affecting any code that is called section. So the section will automatically, when you add it, have a 500 pixels of height. So to add to the navigation, you just select one of the list items and you copy and paste it. And then you adjust the text to say section 4. And you also have to adjust the href attribute to say hashtag section 4. Once you save and refresh, go back to the demo page and you will see that section 4, as it will now appear as a button, and it is clickable and will toggle between section 3 and section 4 and section 2 and section 1, however you would like to do it. And so now you can add whatever code you want into section 4, and when you save and refresh, you can view the code on the demo page and see how it looks and see if it looks correct, and you can adjust it and play with it to see how well it works, like you did with the output code where you yourself can decide which numbers are being multiplied together. So you can continue to add additional sections. At some point you will get to a situation where the navigation will need adjustment because it won't be able to fit so many buttons across. So that'll be really the limiting factor in how many sections you have, or you can go back and just redesign your navigation to fit whatever you're doing. Whatever you choose to do. Presented by Designers Learn Code.